So I thought I'd brainstorm some tips that I either used in my leaving cert or thought would be helpful in retrospect. If you like these tips, you might also find my ebook helpful, which will be linked in the description. Strategy is usually applied in high-stakes scenarios such as war, politics, and business. However, depending on your future plans, the leaving cert might also be a very high-stakes scenario. Therefore, you should treat it as such. Don't study things blindly and develop a plan. The plan doesn't have to specify what you do every day. I never really liked those myself. But it should give you an at-a-glance overview of all the topics you need to cover. Mine looked like this. Prioritize using the 80-20 rule. I've made a video about this before and I will put it in the description. But it basically means that the majority of your outcomes come from the minority of your inputs. So for example, you wear your favorite shoes the majority of the time, and there's a bunch of shoes that you don't usually wear that much. So try to find the topics that give you the biggest benefit for the least amount of work. Figure out how to make the most of your exam papers. With subjects like biology and business, if you can do all the exam questions, you'll most likely be covered for the majority of the exam. Most of the questions are repetitive and not that many new ones come up. You don't have to do them physically because that's a waste of your time, but you can test yourself mentally and just go through them one by one. Again, I've made a video on this before, which I'll link in the description. For subjects like English, be realistic about what's going to come up. Don't study all the side characters if not even all the main characters have come up yet. Just because something has always been done in one way doesn't mean that's the correct way. So for example, you know you're going to have to study, but you don't necessarily have to study in the afternoons. You can study in the mornings, you can study at midday, you can study at night. It's important to figure out which one works the best for you and to not just blindly accept what teachers say, because when teachers give advice, they give generic advice to the entire class. They don't give personalized, specific, just because it's always said you need to study at least 3+ hours, 5 hours a day to get good grades in your leaving cert. That doesn't mean that's the only way to do it. And you obviously don't have to reinvent the wheel, but I found it quite helpful to just question some of these things that are commonly said. Really try and understand your exam papers. If you fully understand how they are set up, you can make your own decisions regarding studying, and you don't have to rely on the opinions of teachers. So some teachers give great advice, but as I've said before, it's not personalized advice. They give generic advice to the entire class. So if you understand the exam yourself, you can critique the advice and see which parts are useful to you and which parts aren't. With my English exam, I realized that I could study one poet less if I just studied all the female poets, as one was pretty much guaranteed to come up. That's advice a teacher probably wouldn't give to you. If you truly understand the exam paper, you can find more quirks like this that save you a lot of time. Another reason to understand exam papers is that it decreases uncertainty. After understanding how an exam worked, I was less stressed because I knew exactly what was required of me, and before I just kind of assumed I needed to know everything, which is not true. Use active recall and spaced repetition. These are the principles of scientific learning which actually make your work more efficient. Quite flexible, so you can adapt them to your way of studying. Just make sure you're using them. I spent weeks summarizing my entire business book, and a short time after I had forgotten most of it. I also did a video on this, so link again will be in the description. Take your time off seriously. If you don't take the break will take itself. It's a quote I saw in a YouTube comment once, and I found it to be very true. Your way of working needs to be sustainable. It's very important to find this balance so you don't overwork yourself, because if you burn out and then you won't be able to perform in an exam, it will all come back to bite you. I'd rather study 2 hours consistently a day than study 10 hours on 2 days and then recover for a week because I'm so tired. It is never too late to start studying. Different people start at different times. I only started to properly study after Christmas. It's obviously easier if you start earlier, but it's never too late. You can always make a difference. Even if you study the day before just a bit, it will make a difference. Realizing that the thought of studying is worse than actually studying. If you think about it, most of us just hate the idea, the anticipation of studying, but I don't recall many times where I'm actually doing the work and I'm like, this is awful, I hate this, I want to stop. Of course, I'd rather do other things, but it's not as bad as you think. You need to get organized, so you need a system that works for you, and it's unlikely that you'll come up with this system in one day. You kind of have to sit down, and if something doesn't work, you throw it away, and if something does work, you keep it, and you just keep adjusting.